Good day to you, sir. Myself, Lingaraji Subramaniam from Business Law, Section 12. Today I'm going to talk about Topic 8 Coercion and Undue Influence, their respective effects upon voidability of contract. Have you ever been forced into signing a contract against your will, or felt pressured by someone in a position of power to make a decision you weren't comfortable with? If so, you might have encountered coercion or undue influence in contract law. Today we will discuss these two legal concepts under Malaysian law, how they impact the validity of a contract, and real life cases that illustrate their consequences. Definition of contract and importance of free consent. A contract is an agreement that is legally binding between two or more parties. However, for a contract to be valid, it must be entered into with free consent. Under Section 10(1) of the Contract Act 1950, an agreement is a contract only if it is made with free consent of the parties. Consent is said to be free when it is not caused by coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, or mistake. If consent is not free, the contract may be violable at the option of the affected party. Today we will focus on coercion and undue influence, two critical factors that can affect the enforceability of a contract. In this video, we will explain the meaning of coercion under Section 15 of the Contracts Act 1950, the meaning of undue influence under Section 16 of the Contract Act 1950, the effect of this contract, the real case law to illustrate these principles. Let's begin with coercion.
Hello, sir. My name is Mukundan. I am from Business Law, Section 12. Today, I want to speak about definition of coercion under Malaysian law. Coercion, as defined under Section 15 of the Contract Act 1950, refers to the act of committing or threatening to commit any act forbidden by the Penal Code or unlawful detention of properties with the intention of forcing a person to enter into an agreement. Essentially, coercion occurs when a person is forced to agree to a contract through unlawful means, making the contract voidable at the discretion of coerced party. Coercion happens when one party forces or threatens another party into entering a contract. This could involve threatening to commit crime, unlawful detaining properties, and causing fear that influence the other party's decision. In simpler terms, if someone uses threats, force, or illegal means to make another person sign a contract, that contract is considered voidable, meaning the victim can choose to cancel it. Now, let us take a look at the example scenario to understand how coercion works in real life. So the scenario is, imagine a situation where Ahmad is in a financial distress and owes a large debt to a lender. The lender, in order to recover his money, threatens to physically harm Ahmad's family unless Ahmad signs an agreement transferring ownership of his house. Fearing for his family's safety, in this case, the contract was entered into under coercion and therefore voidable at Ahmad's option. Is this a valid contract? No. This is a clear case of coercion because Ahmad was forced into signing a contract under serious threat. If this taken to the court, the contract could be declared voidable under Section 15 of the Contract Act 1950. Case law Kesamal, son of Lechmanan, V. Valayabadi Chettiar, 1954, 20 MLJ 119. In this case, the defendant used coercion to compel the plaintiff into a contractual agreement. The court ruled that the contract was voidable as it entered into a under coercion. The judge ruled that since he signed the contract under threat and had no free will, coercion was involved, and the contract was voidable, meaning he had the right to cancel it. Since the case is a clear example of how Malaysian courts handle the situation where coercion is proven, ensuring that individuals are not forced into a unfair contractual obligations.
Undue influence. Definition of undue influence under Malaysian law. Unlike coercion, which involves direct threats or force, undue influence occurs when one party takes advantage of their position of power over another party to obtain an unfair advantage. Section 16(1) of the Contract Act 1950 defines undue influence as a situation where one party is in a position to dominate the will of another and uses the position to unfairly to influence the weaker party's decision making. Unlike coercion, which involves direct threats or force, undue influence is more subtle. It involves mental pressure or manipulation. Conditions for establishing undue influence. 1. The existence of a relationship where one party can dominate the will of another. This can arise from relationships such as parent-child, doctor-patient, or employee-employee. 2. The use of the position to obtain an unfair advantage. The stronger party manipulates the weaker party into signing an agreement that benefits the dominant party unfairly. Now let's look at an example of undue influence and how it affects contracts. Example scenario. Consider a scenario where an elderly man, Mr. Tan, is heavily reliant on his caretaker, John, for daily assistance. John persuades Mr. Tan to transfer a large portion of his wealth to him by constantly reminding him that he might be left without proper care if he does not comply. Feeling pressured, Mr. Tan signs the contract. Here, undue influence is at play as John has taken advantage of Mr. Tan's dependence on him. Is this a valid contract? No. This is a clear case of undue influence. John, who was in a position of trust and power over Mr. Tan, used psychological pressure to make him sign the contract. If taken to court, the court could be declared voidable under Section 16 of the Contract Act 1950. Case law. Inche Nuria vs. Sheikh Ali bin Omar. A significant Malaysian case on undue influence is Inche Nuria vs. Sheikh Ali bin Omar. In this case, an elderly woman gifted a large portion of her property to a religious advisor who had significant influence over her decision. The court held that since there was a presumption of undue influence, the burden of proof shifted to recipient to show that the transaction was fair and voluntary. This case established the principle that transaction is influenced by a dominant party may be set aside if undue influence is proven. The judge ruled that since there was a special relationship between them, undue influence was presumed. The spiritual advisor had to prove that the contract was made freely and fairly, but he failed to do so. Therefore, the contract was voidable and Inche Noria was allowed to cancel the transfer.
Okay, now let's summarize the key points. To summarize, coercion and undue influence both impact the validity of contract under Malaysian law. Coercion involves force or threats as defined in the Section 15 of the Contract Act 1950 and makes a contract voidable if proven. On the other hand, undue influence under Section 16(1) of the Contract Act 1950 occurs when one of the parties takes advantage of their position over to another to gain an unfair benefit. Legal and practical implications. Both coercion and undue influence undermine the principle of free consent in contract law. If a contract is found to be entered under this circumstance, The affected party has the right to avoid the contract. Courts in Malaysia take these issues very seriously, as demonstrated in cases like Kesamal, son of Lechiman, for coercion, and in Noria Shah Ali bin Omar for under influence. The final thoughts of mine. Understanding this legal principle is crucial in ensuring that contracts are entered fairly and justly. Always be aware of your rights and the circumstances under which a contract is signed. If you ever feel forced or unfairly influenced, know that the law is there to protect you. Thank you for watching our presentation.